So welcome everyone to this SCOSS LIBER joint webinar on open infrastructure and featuring the Barcelona Declaration and RDA and software heritage. My name is Hilde from Wijngaarden. I'm here as a member of the LIBER board and a member of the SCOSS board. And in my daily life, I'm also the director of the University Library of the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. And I want to welcome you very much to what promises to be a very interesting webinar. We only have 1 hour exactly, and that will be kind of short for the many interesting topics that we want to discuss with you. But it will give us some time to get into a few very interesting developments that we are all part of and that we want to share with you, and also that we are hoping you will question us about. Before we go to the speakers of this webinar, we kind of want to get to know you a little bit. So we want to set out a poll and ask you to give us a few answers. Barbara, do you manage to get the poll ready? Yes, it works, at least with me. So please, if you could answer the questions about how familiar are you with the Barcelona Declaration? I see things moving, so everybody's filling that in. And then the question is, how familiar are you already with SCOSS? Third question is, how familiar are you with Research Data Alliance, RDA, software heritage? And a last question about who you are representing. Is that a library, a research education institute, a publisher, a funder, or other? I'm seeing most answers already coming in here. And if I look at this, it's encouraging. Most of you already know a little bit or somewhat about the Barcelona Declaration. So you will move from familiar to very familiar, hopefully during the next presentation. You know SCOSS, so that's partly very good, but there are also quite a few people that are not familiar with SCOSS yet. So I see an opportunity here that we can take that up. And then RDA, familiar, well, that's quite a good group already. Software heritage, I think this is a good opportunity to present yourself because not everyone's yet still aware of what you're doing. And we have most libraries and research institutes here. So that is really wonderful. I'm kind of stuck in the presentation right now, but I think that was really interesting for us to do this. Oh, it's starting again. But maybe that was just me. So that gives us a little bit of idea of who we are. And without further ado, I would like to give the word to Bianca Kramer. She is one of the writers of the Barcelona Declaration. So we are really pleased that she's here to present it to us. She will tell us a little bit about what it is. We will take a few questions afterwards because Bianca already has to leave after her presentation. So if you have specific questions for Bianca, please put them in the chat or let us know right after her presentation. Then we can move on with that, because after that we are moving ahead with the program to Rosalie, who's going to talk about SCOSS. And then Hilary, Hanahoe, who is going to talk about a Research Data Alliance, and then Morane, Gruenpeter, who's going to present software heritage. And we have general time for questions and discussion afterwards. So Bianca, can I give it over to you?
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry, but I have still I still had to say that this meeting is recorded. So if you don't want that, just put out your screen or your video, or leave. I'm sorry, but we do want a recording.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Hilde, for this nice introduction, and thanks for inviting me to this webinar. I'm really glad that we are able to do this sort of bringing together these two subjects, Barcelona Declaration and SCOSS and the new infrastructures, because I think they work very closely together, and they build on each other and they can help each other forward, and they all both serve the same goal in supporting open infrastructure and the adoption of open infrastructure. So very happy to be here. I was also very happy to see the results of the poll, that so many of you are already familiar with the Barcelona Declaration. I'll give you a quick rundown of the why behind the declaration, what is in the declaration, and about the current sort of uptake, signatory supporters, and our next plans. And I hope to be able to do all of that in 10 minutes. So the Barcelona Declaration is all about open research information. And why is that important? I usually start by explaining what we actually mean by research information. That's not about open access to publications, it's not about open data, but it's about metadata. It's about the information about research outputs and activities. So often bibliographic metadata, who has conducted research, who has published, affiliations, authors, including funding information, and also information on use and impacts. And why is that important information? It's used in decision-making around strategic priorities, distribution of researchers, and evaluation of researchers and institutions. It's also used to assess the effect of policies by funders, by institutions, by governments. Think about open access policies to assess the effect of open access policies, then information about publication patterns. That's using research information. And then finally, it's also used by researchers and societal stakeholders to find and assess research results. That's making use of bibliographic databases to find research, to find publications and data, etc. So for all these use cases, research information is important. And when that research information is not open, that can cause serious problems at a system level. For instance, when we're using closed research information, that's in closed systems, and I'm just going to name names, systems like Web of Science or Scopus, then we are assessing researchers and institutions based on non-transparent evidence, while we feel that fair assessments requires full transparency. When we use closed research information, we're also often making decisions based on information that's biased against less privileged languages, geographical regions, research agendas. That's the case when a database you use is focused more on English-speaking languages, has less coverage in humanities, and has less coverage of, say, journals and other venues from the Global South. Well, we feel that equitable decision-making requires inclusive information, inclusive data. And finally, when we are monitoring and incentivizing open science based on closed data, that's sort of a contradiction in itself, because we feel that open science also includes and requires open research information. So that's the why of open research information, and that's also the why behind the Barcelona Declaration. And this is not coming out of nowhere. This is very closely aligned, for instance, with UNESCO recommendations on open science, where it's mentioned about the monitoring of open science. It should be kept under public oversight and where possible supported by open, non-proprietary and transparent infrastructures. And I was going to say sentiment, that's not the right word, but the same idea is present in Coara, where it also mentioned that the independence and transparency of data, infrastructure, and criteria for research assessment are critical. So the Barcelona Declaration very closely aligns with those declarations, and also, of course, with the way that that's being moved forward. We don't want to be a totally separate sort of organization or initiative, but really seek to find alignment where possible. So what is the Barcelona Declaration? I put a website on here where you can find everything I'm going to say is also on the website. Barcelona Declaration was drafted and fine-tuned and feedbacked among a group of research information experts representing both organizations performing, funding, and evaluating research, as well as a number of open infrastructure organizations. It was drafted during a workshop in Barcelona in November last year, hosted by Sirius Foundation, which is a consultancy company using a lot of open data, and also they're not necessarily a non-profit, but they really try to also be like socially responsible in the way they do their work. And it was coordinated by Kramer from Curtin Open Knowledge Initiative, Ludo Waldman from CWTS in the Netherlands, and myself. And the declaration was published in April this year. What does the declaration actually say? There are 4 commitments in the declaration. And the first one is that the commitments, and I should stress that, are really aimed at organizations that carry out, fund, and evaluate research. So it's really a call for commitment and involvement from universities, from funders, to do their part in bringing open research information forward. For example, by the first commitment, making openness the default for the research information we use and produce. And one example of that is, for instance, Sorbonne University in France unsubscribing from Web of Science and transferring funding or financial support that came free, partially transferring that to supporting OpenAlex. Another example is the LIBER ranking that CWTS produces, where they last year switched also from using Web of Science to OpenAlex. I should stress that these 2 examples are both about transitioning from Web of Science to OpenAlex, but it's not about those specific databases. It's really about transition from closed information to open research information. And another example is the French Open Science Monitor that uses for their monitoring only open data sources, as well as fully open code to be fully transparent and reproducible. The second commitment that also follows from that is that we will work with services and systems that support and enable open research information. And a very clear example, and I think an example that's really relevant for universities and specifically also for libraries, is the inclusion of open metadata in contracts with publishers. And the contract here between of JISC in the UK with Taylor & Francis is a very good example, because in that contract they included the requirement for the publisher to supply complete metadata to COSEF, including information on affiliation and funders. So it's not just asking the publishers to supply you as a university with these data, but also include these data in the publicly available metadata. And I think we need to have agreements like that with all big publishers. Third commitment, and that's one that's very closely related to why we are all here today, is that if we think open research information is important, if we think that providers and infrastructures of open research information are important, then it also requires commitment to support the sustainability of these infrastructures for open research information. And that, of course, is where SCOSS is a prime example of how to make that happen. And it's also related to, for instance, the principles of open scholarly infrastructure in making decisions what infrastructures to support. It's also about the expectations of infrastructures regarding openness and transparency of their practices. And finally, the fourth commitment is to support collective action to accelerate the transition to openness of research information. And this is really about the sum being larger than its parts. Individual universities can only do so much. Sorbonne was in a position to make the decision to transition away from Web of Science. That's not as easy for perhaps for other organizations. And there can be a lot of questions also about those negotiations with publishers. And there it can help to share experiences and to also take collective actions. So that's what the fourth commitment is about. And how could that look like? We use the term coalition lightly. It's really about what can signatories and supporters do together. So we have a large group of signatories. You see some examples here now with faces and quotes, but they really represent a larger group of signatories. As of today, the declaration has been formally signed by 84 organizations in 23 countries, including universities, other research institutions, funders, governments. And in parallel, 42 organizations providing data, services, and infrastructure are supporters of the declarations. And that includes a large number of the SCOSS infrastructures and also includes Spark Europe itself. And then there are also many organizations that have not yet signed the declaration, but have expressed interest in contributing to this transition. And this slide already mentions the conference. You might ask what conference? And that is a big part of the next steps. We took that earlier this week when we had a Paris conference on open research information that included 130 participants representing signatories and supporters. Also, a couple of the people in the audience today were present in this at this conference. And we did two things. We had a full day of sharing information and experiences. And then on the second day, we developed an initial roadmap of next steps. I'm not going to share those outcomes today because we're still digesting them and sort of streamlining them, but they will be shared shortly, and that will provide more concrete actions that universities and funders and supporters, infrastructures can take together to take these commitments forward. So if you want to get involved, if you want to know more, if you're interested in signing or supporting the declarations, send us an email at contact@Barcelona Declaration, follow us on social media, and we'll also start a mailing list shortly for signatories and supporters to communicate and be involved. That's all I wanted to say for now. As Hilde said, I welcome a couple of short clarifying questions, but then the discussion can be had later, especially also how this connects so well with SCOSS and with a number of the infrastructures that you will hear more of later in this hour.
Thank you so much, Bianca. I think that sums it right up. And I heard about the Paris conference that really sounded like a wonderful opportunity to discuss it next step with each other. Are there any specific questions for Bianca at this time? Nothing in the chat. I'm just checking with Barbara, checking the chat. Okay, that helps us keep our time within this hour. So thank you so much, Bianca. And I know you have to leave soon, but I hope you can still take a little bit of time to listen to Rosalie. Rosalie is going to present the SCOSS program, which is so well connected to our goals in the Barcelona Declaration, because SCOSS wants to help us all take the next steps toward open infrastructure. Rosalie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bianca, for that presentation. Also, LIBER for hosting us today, and everyone in the audience for their time. I really appreciate it. I know we're all super busy these days. So I'm Rosalie Lack. I'm the SCOSS coordinator, SCOSS being Global Sustainability Coalition for Open Science Services. And I'm going to start my presentation being maybe just a little provocative today. We wrote a blog post somewhat recently, a couple months ago, that's on the SCOSS website, entitled "Imagine a World Without Open Infrastructure." But I have to say, luckily, you don't actually have to imagine it because they're SCOSS, so we're not going to let that happen. But I think it's worth sometimes taking stock on, what we take for granted and what if it wasn't there anymore. So we sort of talked a little bit in this blog post about that, like what are some of the financial challenges that are really ongoing with these open infrastructures that we've become so used to and so dependent on. the main issue, one of the main issues really is that there is this sense of focusing on project funding versus operations funding. So these infrastructures get funded for projects or different initiatives, but this ongoing operational funding that they so desperately need is not always there. And then really overall, this idea of what's the incentive to fund something that's quote unquote, and I say quote unquote free, because obviously it's not free, that's free to use, but these infrastructures are not free to run and to support. And so these are the financial challenges that these infrastructures are facing. And again, if we just take a moment to really imagine a future, also touched on by Bianca, without these open infrastructures, we're really seeing a system that is locked up behind proprietary systems. We're not able to exchange data sorry, I'm having my computer's a little off kilter for me there. We're having systems that are in proprietary systems. We're not able to exchange data as we would like, as Bianca explained with the declaration. And also, I think one thing that's really kind of close to me is this idea of not being aligned with our library values. I mean, as a librarian, I know that we take the long view about things that commercial infrastructures or commercial entities don't always do, which is we're looking at things like preservation and and how to have equitable access for everyone and the widest possible participation. And these are things that are aligned with our values. And we want to support infrastructures that are aligned with these values. So we look to really a way forward in this environment of how we can sorry, I'm having issues with my screen, of how we can move forward with incentivizing funding of these infrastructures. And it really has to be a collective effort for all of us to be shifting our priorities, not funding what we used to fund, and collectively funding these infrastructures in order to make this a success. So this is where SCOSS comes in. And just to read our aim here, it's help sustain vital, non-commercial, open infrastructure that supports the implementation of open science. And each of these words is really important. I'm not going to go over every single word, obviously, but the idea that we sustain and vital, these are essential infrastructures, determined to be essential. They're non-commercial. So, and they're open infrastructure, because there is such thing as, of course, commercial open infrastructure, but SCOSS focuses on non-commercial open infrastructure, and in order to support the implementation of open science. So we strongly believe that open science is built on open infrastructure. That's the way that we see this environment. And again, supporting what Bianca said about the Barcelona Declaration of that we can't have closed data in open science. There's a disconnect there. So how do we do this? So I started with SCOSS now back in the spring, and it's a complicated model, I have to admit, but now I got it down. So any questions, ask me. I have it figured out. So let me explain it to you. So for those who may not be quite aware, I know that there was around 40 or 50% still not unfamiliar. So here's our model. And it's an interesting one I had not seen before. So, and I think it's turning into to be an effective model. So it's exciting to be involved in it. But so SCOSS, once a year, we put out a call, and infrastructures will apply to be in the SCOSS family of endorsed infrastructures. And we go through a sort of a 360 review of these infrastructures. So we're looking at their governance, we're looking at their strategic plans, we're looking, are they widely, globally implementing solutions, or are they just a national solution that doesn't affect the global kind of landscape? Are they essential? Are they being used by a broad range of disciplines and regions? And so this kind of rigorous vetting happens of each of these infrastructures. And then we select 2 to 4 each year, and those are then endorsed for investment. And so they're endorsed long-term for investment, but each round has a 3-year cycle. And during that 3-year cycle, we're promoting those infrastructures in that round to consortia, to individual institutions, to research funders. And those institutions then know that we have vetted and that these are essential infrastructures that should be supported. And then the relationship is built between the consortia and the individual institutions and these infrastructures. And so we think this is the model that's going to help move this forward to a sustainable model as that relationship moves beyond the SCOSS 3 years, as that these infrastructures are with us. So any questions on that? I'm happy to talk about more in the Q&A. So also to be clear that SCOSS is a global organization. We represent on our governance board and our advisory group, we have people who are from all continents at this point. So it's broader than Europe. It's North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and so forth. To give you a sense of the size of the open infrastructures, these are currently the 15 infrastructures that are a part of SCOSS. And if there's anything on here that you're not familiar with, I highly recommend you Google, because they are essential and widely used infrastructures that are leaders in their communities. So definitely take a look at them and familiarize yourself with them. On this slide, I wanted to just show you a visual of how these infrastructures are connected. In the middle are the SCOSS infrastructures, and they're connected to each other. And then on the outer circle are the open, sort of the broader open infrastructure ecosystem. And I just really want to stress on this one how when you're supporting the SCOSS infrastructures, it's really supporting this broader ecosystem that is encompassing SCOSS, but also other open infrastructures, as they are just a tightly knit system. And again, these slides will be available if you can't see all these images. So I just wanted to touch on, bring in a connection with what Bianca just talked about. And certainly we can see that in the commitment 3 is definitely, as Bianca pointed out, where SCOSS sits and where we're committed to supporting a sustainable infrastructure for open research information. And at this point, I think it's on the agenda for the SCOSS board to review whether to be a signatory. And I think we would sign under the supporter category. So if others are interested and unclear of which category to sign under, please contact Bianca for sure, because we talked with her on this topic. Okay, so just checking my time. I'm a little over, so I'm going to speed through right now. So I'm just going to speed through these slides. You can take a look at these when we share the slides, just showing you each of the different rounds and the different funding targets and how those targets were met or not met over the years. The second and third cycle, archive, Redlick, DSpace, and third cycle, fourth cycle, Dryad, La Referencia, ROAR. Again, all amazing infrastructures that should be supported. And finally, last but not least, RDA and software heritage that we'll hear from today. So I will conclude with kind of, what can you do? Promote, join, fund. I've talked a lot about fund. Fund is certainly important. Please talk with your decision makers, or if you are a decision maker on funding, support these infrastructures. But also as important is to join your leaders in your organization. So consider joining on a governance board, consider a user group, a working group, just getting involved with these open infrastructures. And also equally importantly, is to promote them, when you're working with your researchers, with your graduate students, you're in a committee somehow, please tell people about these infrastructures, promote their use, and promote a community around them. And so just to end with, open science is built on open infrastructure. Let's keep that in mind. And please follow us on our various social media, and I'm available. Please send me an email with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. And we do have an immediate question. Rest of them can wait to the for the Q&A. But there's a question about the 3-year cycle. Why is it a 3-year cycle that is organized right now?
Oh, that is a good question. You know, I think that we had to choose a financial model that, and a decision was made that it was a 3-year cycle that was each for each of the infrastructures. But to be clear, once an infrastructure is in the SCOSS family of infrastructures, they're always in it, and people continue to fund infrastructures from the pilot year. There's not as if funding stops through SCOSS or through anyway. After the 3 years, we just had to sort of choose a time frame that I think made sense to allow us to really promote them, really focus on them, and during that intensive 3-year period. And we encourage people to fund on a 3-year cycle, and so that you can fund upfront, you know, for all 3 years or over 3 years. We think that kind of allows funding to be stretched over time, and it just seemed like it's a reasonable time frame for that funding cycle. But we're very flexible with the funding cycle. So if you're interested in supporting,
you can also fund forever. That's fine.
I know,
too.
we should just say fund forever. Yes, maybe that should be our new thing. Thank you. Yeah,
okay.
We're flexible on that.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. And please stay with us until the end for more interactive Q&A that we're having after we hear more about 2 of our newest infrastructures that are representing themselves. First, we're going to hear from Hilary, who is Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance.
Thank you very much, Hilde. And thank you to LIBER and also to SCOSS for organizing this webinar. We are delighted to be here and to talk about, I'm just waiting for my slides to do what, there we go. Okay, hopefully you see them in full mode now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I was pleased to see in the poll at the beginning of the webinar that many people are very familiar with the Research Data Alliance. And that is also, of course, thanks not just to the work of SCOSS, but LIBER, who are a long-term partner of the Research Data Alliance and already support us. So what I'm going to focus on is actually what the Research Data Alliance and the Barcelona Declaration sort of have in common and how we can support each other, I believe. Even though it's in its nascent stages, the Research Data Alliance, the global organization, is a supporter, of course, of the Barcelona Declaration, not a signatory because we don't fund. We're actually supporting in terms of the implementation, and our European legal entity, so our representation in Europe, is also a supporter of that. So the Research Data Alliance, you know, has been around since the 2013, so we're in our 11th year. But I really like this. I read this book by Chris Anderson, who's the head of TED, and this idea of infectious generosity and the business model that he had around TED. How do you sell something that's completely open? And what I took very much from that for my organization, but I believe also for the Barcelona Declaration, is this infectious generosity, the nature of people to give things away in a selfless, if you like, manner, even though it, of course, it has a benefit. And I like to think of the Research Data Alliance community, which is a rather large and very generous community, as being one like that. And I mean, the model that Chris Anderson had, we are lucky to have it too. So what are the values of the Research Data Alliance? And it's important to give you some context before I hone in very quickly on the how we support the 4 commitments. We have a very ambitious vision that the researchers and innovators can openly share and reuse data across technologies, disciplines, and countries to solve the grand challenges of society. And that means that we look at any technology, all domains, and every country. And we do that by building the social and the technical bridges that can enable that vision. But what's really important in this particular context are these guiding principles, which we have are founded on, and our community works on those, our outputs, our activities, but also our organizational and operational principles are based on these of openness, that everything is consensus driven. We are inclusive in terms of gender and geography and race and inclusivity in that very broad sense. Harmonization, reducing the duplication of efforts. That's what we mean by that. Not trying to harmonize what's happening together and offer a platform so that people understand what's happening and harmonizing things. And it's community driven. So the community decides what the topics we work on are, and it is non-profit and technology neutral. That also is specifically for our outputs. Anything that's made available in RDA must not have any technology lock-in. It must not have any commercial, if you like, paywall or anything behind it. Everything should be you are able to take it free of charge and implement it. So who makes up this infectious, generous community, as I like to call them? So we have, as you can see, a large number of researchers. Our largest component are actually those self-declared, by the way, as researchers. We have quite a significant group of librarians. And in fact, one of our largest interest groups, Libraries for Research, is Libraries for Research Data. So the librarian component has always been a very important and strong one in the Research Data Alliance. And as you can see, we have quite 70%, almost 70% of our members come from organizations in research and academia. And that, follows with, if you like, our target, though we are open to all, if you like, stakeholders and organizational types. We are a global organization. That is what makes RDA unique and different. It is global. Everything, the idea is that actually by being as open and as global as possible, then we can really break down these barriers, if you like, to research and science. And we know that research and science don't have geographical borders. In many cases, collaboration doesn't. So if we can support the global aspect. We've members from over 152 countries in the world. Of course, there's a big contingent in Europe, and then followed by North America. That follows, if you like, our initial funding also. Our funders have been from traditionally from the Northern Hemisphere. So how do we support the commitments? The first one, of course, in making openness by the default, for information. Well, already our RDA community is working through, we have these mechanisms tried and tested of interest and groups and working groups and communities of practice. And everything they do is open. RDA membership, individual membership is free of charge. Anyone can join. You abide by our guiding principles and our code of conduct, of course. But you can join, you can follow, you can contribute. And of course, all of the outputs and everything that is generated by the community are completely open, including all the best standards, the best practices, guidelines, etc. They're all open, as I said previously when I mentioned. So we very much support this in terms of that the default is open. And of course, we look towards research data management. In our case here, we're talking about research information, but many of the groups and the activities in RDA actually, support or cross over here with the Barcelona Declaration and the focus of that one. We work with all stakeholders. That includes the commercial ones, by the way, but our ambition there is actually to include them. And I have some concrete examples, which I won't give now, but of where working with the commercial organizations in this open, if you like, driven way has actually, we have found community driven solutions that have also been, if you like, what may have been contested as some more commercial proprietary ideas have actually been in support of a more community driven and taken up by the community. So by working together, we work with all stakeholders. That is, of course, our choice as a community driven organization. And we work globally, to make these systems and processes more open, including the harmonization of different systems. So In terms of the third one, well, of course, we are rather than supporting the sustainability of infrastructures, we ourselves are an infrastructure that is open and needs sustenance and sustainability. And you heard all about that from SCOSS. That's why we're in this funding round. We deliver invaluable contributions and impact to open science and open research, and we allow the community a space, a safe space, but an open and neutral space to support and to provide solutions for these things. So in that, for the fourth commitment, I think I was thinking about this one, you know, this transition, because I know we're in the start of this declaration. We are, as I said, a supporter. And I believe that we can support in these ways because we collaborate with many international initiatives. Yes, we can support the implementation of the declaration. We have a funders forum and over 100 organizational affiliate members, and over 9,000 global organizations are actually represented through our 14,500 individual membership community. So we can support in whatever way, however the fourth commitment, if you like, shapes up to be and what that coalition is. So what can we all do together? So to those of you on the call and others in your organizations, well, I believe that you should use our network as well to engage in RDA as individual members, to understand and to we can advance the declaration's goals by using these tried and tested groups and mechanisms. We have many examples of how we work together with other organizations to achieve that. Sometimes that's not appropriate because people want to do things in a more closed or different structured way, but we are very open, and we have from the start supported COADA with this idea, and we're very open to leveraging our mechanisms to support the goals of the declaration. Of course, we can raise awareness, because my understanding is that, yes, it was launched in Europe and like many things, but we have a global reach in RDA, and we would like very much to support the dissemination of this. And of course, you can help by sustaining RDA in terms of the SCOSS funding aspect. For this cycle, our goals, we have our business as usual is slightly different, but we are a very Northern Hemispheric organization, like you saw, and we need to identify funding in order for us to build our Southern Hemispheric community and to help them reach the same capacity that the rest of us in the Northern Hemisphere are fortunate to have due to the, if you like, resources in a different way. We also would like, of course, to support the creation of standards for research data management. So we have different levels. It's all on the web platform, so I won't, on the SCOSS one and on our own. One of the things about if you pledge through the SCOSS support for the 3 years in the cycle, we want you to join our organizational members, which is a very large stakeholder group. So I finish by saying that we talk about bridges. That's our mission. We want to build the social and the technical bridges. No bridge is the same, right? We have very many bridges, but we support the declaration, and I believe that not just for the Barcelona Declaration of Open Information, but of course with the SCOSS family that we saw before and all the other organizations, we all underlyingly believe in this concept of open research and open science. And I would like to hope that we can build bridges together. And the last thing I want to say is we all know that you can go very fast if you go alone. Sometimes things take longer. Consensus, I know that. Consensus takes much longer. Community takes a little longer sometimes to get together. But if you want to go far, we really need to go together. So I'm looking forward to continuing this journey, like this wonderful family of elephants that I saw my daughter took a picture of. I'm looking forward to this journey together with SCOSS, but also with the Barcelona Declaration, and hopefully with many of you. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Hilary. You show us how we're all interconnected, and the transition that we're making, we're in that together. So let's support each other in doing that. I hope that people will think about their questions to you for after the next presentation. So to keep on time, I think that we start immediately with the presentation about software heritage by Morane Gruenpeter.
Thank you, Hilde, and thank you, LIBER and SCOSS, for organizing this and inviting me. I see that time is running, but I want to thank you all for being here and taking the time to listen to us, because open infrastructure are really important, in my opinion. I hope you see my slides. I will talk about another type of open infrastructure, infrastructure for source code. And my name is Gruenpeter. I'm head of open science operation at Software Heritage, and we are a universal source code archive serving the scholarly ecosystem. Now, software is a new challenge for academic libraries. It's a new challenge for academia because software powers all research disciplines, and research software can have an impact on society as a whole. And I do know that some artifacts are very known to how to deal with, like articles and data, but software is a different type of artifact. And one example of an impact that really had taken is the World Wide Web that's connecting all of us. Now, we should consider, and it is being recognized, that software is on par with research articles and data. And the links between these are very important. Now, why I'm saying it's recognized, because already in the UNESCO recommendation 2021 and the French National Plan for Open Science, software has a big part. Now, for science, what do we need to archive? Because software has multiple facets. It can be a tool, it can be a research outcome or result, and it can be an object of research. And you can see in this picture, in this funny one, that sometimes a very small dependency on a very small item can bring down a much larger stack of research software. And then we get this unwanted result that research is not reproducible. Now, the software is executable knowledge written for humans to read and for machine to execute. And the importance is to have this knowledge and keep this knowledge. And I think that libraries has an important part in that. And we see Margaret Hamilton next to the code from the Apollo 11 guidance computer, and it was preserved in the MIT Research Library. So as I said, research libraries have a pivotal role in that, to make software preservation required and a coordinated effort. Now, I've inserted this question before, knowing that we will have a poll. So I do know here that most of you don't know software heritage as much as I would like, but this is a good thing, because now you can discover it and you can come and see the archive. So what is software heritage? It's a non-profit, multi-stakeholder and open infrastructure to collect, preserve, and share all source code. And these figures are actually outdated. I'm going to put a link in the chat in maybe just now, so that you can go and see the actual numbers, that we have more than 322 million projects and more than 20 billion source code files. Now, it is, as I said, an open infrastructure where we are sharing the code commons as in a trustworthy way, where you can browse, save code like the Wayback Machine, and also rescue legacy code. And this is not developed in isolation. We are serving the scholarly ecosystem and creating connections with other infrastructures as part of one of the EOSC, European Open Science Cloud project, FAIRCO for EOSC. We are building connections between other open infrastructure that are aggregators like SWMath and OpenAir, publisher like Episciences and Dagstuhl, and even scholarly repository like Zenodo and the dance Dataverse instance. And this is based on recommendations that were developed in the scholarly infrastructure for research software report. Now, Rosalie has already told you not to imagine a world without open infrastructures, and I don't want to tell you to do that. I actually want to thank SCOSS to give this as a platform, a way, a network to have to get help for being sustainable. And now we have through SCOSS established a new membership agreement called the Archives and Libraries Interest Group, where supporters can contribute by supporting an open infrastructure, getting tailored support as part of this interest group, and be part of a larger community that is interested in the same topic, in software for archives and libraries. Now, this is my last slide, call to action, because software recognition requires a global and coordinated effort. Policy describes what is required, desired, and incentivized. Infrastructure determins what is possible, but the community determines how things are done in practice. And you are the community. And we saw also with RDA. RDA is a community infrastructure, and we need this to build something together for mutualization, sustainability, curation, recognition, and open by default, as we see also in the Barcelona Declaration. So let's work together. This is the Software Heritage team behind the scenes, and I thank you again for having me here.
Thank you so much, Morane. And this is really wonderful to see all these different aspects of working together on an open infrastructure. On one hand, we need concepts and understand each other on a larger scale, but we also need to work on a practical environment in where we can save our software, of course, but also share it amongst each other. I hope that you enjoyed listening to these 4 presentations that are interconnected, and I'm hoping for questions or also the comments that will give us something to talk about together. You can put them in the chat, or you can just start talking. That's fine too. We have a very open Zoom meeting. Raise your hand, it's possible as well. So, while you're thinking about your question, I have one that I would like to share with our speakers today. It might be too big, because these are big issues that we're working on. In Dutch, in the Netherlands, we have a saying, de kost gaat voor de baat uit. Cost before benefit is actually what it says. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we have right now. If we look at our stressed budgets, we know that we want to spend our money differently than we used to. But we first have to invest in alternatives before we can really take that step into an open infrastructural world, especially if we are talking about the publishers and the research information that is still available in commercial systems. So how are we going to take that step? Is there something that we can do to take the jump together? Is there what is the best argument for convincing our funders to invest right now and have a profit or a benefit later? Does any of our 3 speakers want to talk about that? Hilary.
Well, it's interesting, Hilde, I suppose, coming in particularly with the news of the cuts in the Netherlands, right? Which means that actually, if the resources were low, no, they're even, lower now, and you really have to prioritize. And it's a really tough decision. And question to answer, I believe, because, you know, how do we convince them to make the step? Well, they're all signatories of the Open Science Declaration and have all said that they will, you know, take this forward and it will be implemented. So achieving that everything that all of us do is actually in, if you like, with a view to achieving that in the long term. We did a report in 2014 called The Data Harvest, and it was about the fact that sometimes, you know, it's hard, it's the cost of not having things, actually, which is the way that Rosalie presented it in the beginning. And I believe it said it's very hard, particularly now, because you're being asked to invest a lot of money. But of course, you must build these bridges in the right way, right? So that they, it's like roads. You must invest in them so that they are long term. I believe, though, that this open infrastructure and all these different initiatives, it's really good, actually, that we're working together, because the collaboration will also help the reducing the efforts, you know. But yeah, you have to convince them by saying that this is public money, and that by investing some of their other public money, they actually will get a huge return on investment at the longer term. It's my opinion.
Thank you very much. Rosalie, Morane, do you want to comment on this?
I can comment quickly on software heritage. So something that we are encouraging, that we don't recreate what software heritage is creating by mutualizing the effort. So funding software heritage is a way to not recreate the same infrastructure internally in an institution or research center or in a university. So instead of investing in maybe in a commercial software or any other solution, join software heritage, come and use software heritage and fund software heritage to have this service for your institution.
Really strong arguments again. Thank you so much. Yeah, Rosalie?
Yeah, it's hard to follow those 2 points. I think both of them I completely agree with. I think this idea that it's an additional cost, no, we can't afford it, but we're spending money. How are we spending the current money we're spending? And is it the smartest way? I mean, are we all going to build another set of repositories to store software? Like, that doesn't seem like a great idea. So yeah, there's ways that, in fact, you're saving funds with open infrastructure solutions. You know, if you have a choice, you're going to build something new. Should I build it, or should I license it, or should I use an open source solution or open infrastructure solution? You know, there's different decisions we make that economically open infrastructure is in many cases the best economical decision. So I think if you just look at money, ins and outs, it's also a good decision. But I think it also, honestly, we have to think about our own values and where we are, why we're in academia, and long-term, why we do what we do. There's a long view of preservation, of serving researchers today and in the future, and we have to stay in alignment with that. So I think these kind of just the hard black and white numbers, but also matching that with our values when we make the case, I think it's a strong sell for sure.
Thank you very much. So especially in times when money is tight, we should think about where we want to invest our money in, and how we can work together in saving money, but also keeping to our values and helping our researchers. So that is a very good conclusion for after these wonderful presentations. One last chance for another question or point that we can take forward at the end of today. I did see some chat remarks, but mostly of people thanking us for this interesting session. So that's nice to hear that. I completely agree. And I hope that everybody that was here today enjoyed what we were saying, and will, of course, promote funding the infrastructures, and also, of course, stay involved, sign the Barcelona Declaration, and also talk together about the practical steps we can take to implement moving towards an open infrastructure together. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon again.